But yeah, I'm just really happy to be joined by you, Lizzie. Lizzie Campbell, aka Clay Disarray.
Clay Disarray,
Yeah. Welcome to the Gentle Rebel podcast. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be asked, really.
Yeah. So I mean, there are a few areas that I would love to get into with you. Really, I suppose around personal and professional, your personal and professional relationship with art and creativity. And I first came across you, I think it was about a month or so ago, through YouTube when a video popped up on my feed, 4 reasons why it's hard for artists right now. And I was really taken by your peaceful presence and your tone and the way that you approach things. And you describe your YouTube channel as a calm, creative corner of YouTube, which I think, it's exactly that. You know, I could watch your videos all day. There's something about seeing the way that you create using clay that I don't know, it's about the visual viewing of the process. It just enriches my soul. So,
thank you.
I'd maybe love to just get a bit of your story around that journey. Like, how did you land on polymer clay and things? Yeah.
It's an interesting one. I've kind of always been creative. I've always drawn, actually, and certainly as a kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist or an illustrator or something along those lines. And I went to art college when I was 17, but for a multitude of reasons, I had to drop out. Really, I just didn't get on with my dad, and that kind of exacerbated kind of our relationship with me sort of being at college. So I had to drop out, and so I went into the big wide world of employment, and I've done numerous jobs, way too many. I think at the last count it was about 30 or 40, and it was always in sales, recruitment, events organisation, comms work. And I just always really struggled with it because it just didn't feel like I was cut out to do it, really. I just found it always really hard, and I just really desperately wanted to go back to college. So I found myself in a position of being able to do so in my early to mid 30s. And I went to college in Leamington. I did a HND in visual communication there, followed by a top-up in Birmingham, where I did a Viscom degree. And it was a multimedia course, so I kind of had no idea where I was going to go with it. I just assumed I'd come out as an illustrator at the end of it, because that was all that I knew, really. And it was during the HND class or HND course that we had a class one day where we were just kind of experimenting with clay, and I'd never really used it before, and I just, for whatever reason, felt that I had like an innate kind of love of the material. But because I see myself primarily as an illustrator, I just thought, this has got loads of potential in terms of being able to make models and mini sets, and to just make images, really. And that's loosely how Clay Disarray was born. It was I started doing a project for One Brief called May Contain Spoilers, and I just reimagined film scenes with it was air dried clay models that were really rough and ready. I had huge time constraints in trying to get this kind of piece of work done. So I created about 40 of them, and some were better than others, but through that project, it made me really want to, really delve into 3D work. So I then discovered polymer clay not long after it, and it's a wholly different material to air dry clay. It's essentially a plastic. So it's basically taken me about 10 years to learn how to use it, really. But yeah, I just see there's a sort of crossover between polymer clay and pop culture in my work. I think they're, I've huge influences from pop culture. I'm a child of the sort of 80s, really. So it's a time when movies were really kind of, the most, well, brilliant that they've ever been in many ways, really. So, I just use that as a kind of main inspiration, really. And that's, where my portfolio started, I think.
That's really interesting. And that crossover with the, like, illustration side, like there's a clear link there. And because there's a sort of cartoony caricature. I think they
look like cartoons in 3D.
Exactly.
Really. Yeah. And because I've got a real passion for kind of illustration work or image work, I often get asked about doing kind of animation work through that. And I think, it might seem like the kind of natural progression for my work, but it's something that I'm really not interested in at all. For me, I'm just all about the sort of static image, which, has been probably detrimental to my career. I had an agent at one point, and they were really trying to encourage me to think about how I could animate my work. And, I think there was a real disconnect there between me and the agency. And I think perhaps, would I say I should have been more honest? I think I was honest, actually. But, it just made me realise at that time, I'm just happy with still images. It's, all I want to do. So, it's, I think it's quite sort of unique work. And, I just really enjoy that, really. I like having work that doesn't really look like anybody else's, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and fair play for sticking to your guns, and because I think it's easy to get drawn into the things that people say, oh, you should go down this road.
And actually it's a wholly different discipline. If I wanted to create fully articulated models with my work, I'd probably need another 3 years of study and learning how to do that. It's wholly different. So
the sort of the mechanisms within the model itself to actually make it move. And
I looked into it briefly and I thought it's not for me, really. I'm just happy with my sort of static work.
I think it's great. It's funny, I guess people would see it and maybe draw links to things like, I guess, like the Wallace and Gromit and like Aardman and all. And it's like limited scope of like a construct in your head or frame of reference. And it's like, well, obviously that would be animation, but like you wouldn't say that to a painter or necessarily an illustrator either, that obviously you should animate.
It's true. It's a good kind of analogy, really. It's not everybody feels comfortable with animated work. I just like the oddness, really, of creating a sort of still image, because it's it is a little confusing, I think, and I think that's kind of what works with it, really.
Absolutely. I think I came across, was it a series of horror movie images?
That's my main passion project.
So good, because there's the familiarity, like you know those movies, but there's it's slightly different, the way that, and then it's like, whoa, that's been modelled. That's incredible. Like,
thank you.
It just brings something beautiful out of it.
I think horror movies probably played a part in being my main inspiration, because I grew up with three older brothers, so I felt very much like an only child, and they'd occasionally have like horror movies on, and of course I'd be sent to bed and I'd think, I really want to see what's going on here. So I'd occasionally, catch a glimpse of something I shouldn't have seen. But, it's just really stuck in my brain. And I think it's almost like looking at, these horror visuals through a child's mind, really. There's that kind of language, children are so used to seeing cartoon characters or animated characters, claymation characters, and it's how a child almost was visualize this kind of stuff through their own kind of minds. So I just like that whole idea, really. I'm probably a bit weird, though.
Aren't we all? No, that's great. That's really well articulated as well. Like seeing those characters through the child mind. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and we exchanged some messages about sort of high sensitivity and neurodiversity and autism and the relationship with creativity as well. As we were kind of reflecting on potential angles that we could take. How have those things maybe shaped you and your relationship with what you do as well?
Oh, hugely. I only discovered that I'm autistic this year in February. So, I've suspected for about 20 years or so.
Right.
But I had that diagnosis come through, and, it's a huge thing to be told officially about yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still kind of working through that. And I suspect I'll be working through that for, some time to come. It's trying to kind of reframe things a lot of the time, and, why I, behave like that, or perhaps why I'm interested in this thing, or why I'm quite stubborn with stuff, or, why perhaps I've been drawn to making all of this stuff. It's just sort of helping me, just make sense of a lot of things, really. I think I'm possibly ADHD as well, but I'm having to go through that kind of process. So I think it's just amazing, everybody, not everybody, but people that, think they might be autistic or ADHD or neurodiverse have suddenly access, to finding out this information. And you hear all these tropes about, everybody's autistic these days, or, I think, I wish everybody was, quite honestly. We might have a bit more kind of understanding of a kind of, the world at large. But I think it's just, people having access to this at last to find out, why they've struggled. And I just think it's great, really. And more power to people for, going through the process. It's not easy, but it's, I'd certainly recommend doing so.
Yeah. And has that changed anything about the way that you work, or any practical elements?
I think I'm being kinder to myself.
Right.
And the more that I'm learning about autism, I used to kind of, beat myself up about stuff, and, imposter syndrome, particularly with my arts and, creativity. And, that's part and parcel a lot of the time with, an autistic kind of personality type, really. So, I just think it's making, a lot of sense of stuff for me. And I'm just trying to find ways now of trying to maybe introduce it to my work somehow. It's, early days. And I've actually very recently set up another YouTube channel called Creative Autistic, where I'm just kind of really trying to sort of process all of this stuff as well. So it's been really nice to, discover the kind of autistic community on YouTube, because, I'm finding out loads of stuff that's, suddenly kind of making sense. And I'm thinking that could be a receptacle in many ways for sort of new creative projects, because I'd like to go back or relearn how to draw, because I haven't done it for so long. So I've got my iPad and a pen, and through this project, I'm hoping, how to learn how to draw and just use the visuals for kind of videos on there as well. Right. So it's, a voyage of discovery at the moment, really. I just want to learn how to apply all this to, my creative self. Mm-hmm. It's just, I've got a few ideas, but it's just, as it's getting time to do stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting, so the relationship with creativity, I find endlessly fascinating when I work with a lot of highly sensitive people, sensory processing sensitivity. And there's often a reluctance to think of themselves as creative, but then kind of work through some stuff and will find ways, like low stakes ways, to enter some creative processes. And it's a great way to discover things about yourself and to start to listen to what I distinguish really between your creative sound. So the things that you notice when you observe the world around you, what are the things that catch your attention? You know, stuff that maybe other people don't notice, and you talk about them and people are like, what are you talking about? And then how that feeds that journey of learning, you know, who am I? How do I hold the world? And then how do I want to turn that stuff into an outward expression? Whether it's through a creative practice or just the things you're interested in or whatever, and just allowing yourself to be interested in those things. And so, I'm kind of interested how creativity, and it's interesting that you've started that other channel, because it sounds like there's some processing going to happen there and some exploration. So, I wonder if you were talking to someone who's maybe exploring themselves and thinking about where creativity might fit, like, what would that look like, if that makes sense as a question?
It's interesting you said that a lot of neurodiverse people don't feel creative, because I can relate to that, because for quite some time now I've often thought, the stuff that I do or the stuff that I make is essentially copies of things. I know that I've gone on to develop my own style, but I use pop culture as my main influence or my main inspiration, really. And I sometimes wonder, is that a creative act of taking somebody's own idea and reworking that or reframing that in your own style, or is that an act of creativity? And it's taken me ages to really think about this question, and it's really bothered me, actually, because I haven't felt creative as a result of that, because I haven't come out with original ideas. I've come out with an original art style, but is that the difference between arts and design anyway? That's a chicken and egg kind of question, really. Art's all about ideas, and design is sort of the flow through of process and creating something that works, a piece of design. But since my diagnosis, I've realised, it doesn't actually matter too much. If I feel creative, and that's an amazing kind of feeling anyway. It's one of the few times where my head empties and lets me just work on this specific thing. I've always got all these mad ideas going through, and it's nice to sort of quieten down all that stuff in your brain, as many creative people will go through. And it's, I just find the act of being creative kind of really helps with that. I don't know if that kind of answers your question at all, but, it's something that has kind of bothered me for years, but I find that, I am being kinder to myself as a result of that now. I think, it's such a big question. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're creative and you're being creative, that kind of all that matters.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's not something I've thought about before, with that distinction between feeling like you're copying other people, but actually again, the sound image, your sound comes through what you do, like the uniqueness, like the creative spirit, is there in how you manifest those models, even if they are based on other things.
I think the fan art community gets a lot of hate for that, really. So many hugely talented artists out there, and it's so difficult to get your work noticed or seen, and fan art is a brilliant way of doing that, and they're often demonized by other artists in the community. And, the art community, or the illustration community in particular, is generally lovely. But, there does seem to be this weird criticism of, people that create fan arts as a result of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So like your YouTube channel, where the original one where I sort of saw you originally, clearly a big part of your life and the stuff that you're doing at the moment. What inspired you to start that, and where does that fit with your overall?
I think because I'm essentially a really quiet person, and I live with my partner and my dog, and really happy with that. And so I don't see a lot of people. It was just a real way of connecting with the world, I thought. And certainly in the early days of my Clay Disarray channel, I think it's probably about 8 years old now, maybe 9. And I was kind of learning myself, really. And it was just a way of communicating with other artists out there. It was a different medium or a different platform entirely to Twitter, which, I've always loved. And it's a shame what's become of Twitter now, I have to say.
It is.
I hate it so much, but, I can't leave it because it's really important to get your work seen. And I did try and leave it about 6 months ago, but I'm back now. But yeah, it was just a really nice way of learning a different skill as well. Putting together videos is a different thing entirely from creating work, and it just gives you a break from that, day-to-day stuff that you're kind of doing all the time. So that's just where it started, really. I have to say, it's 8 years old now, and it hasn't done terribly well in terms of engagement, but it's still something that I really enjoy doing. I think YouTube's just hard, isn't it? It's really hard to kind of beat the algorithm. And I don't know that, I ever will with that channel, but it doesn't really matter to me. I just really enjoy making content on there.
That's really good. Yeah. It's one of the, because you get the algorithmic trends, don't you? And you maybe watch videos of people like, this is how to beat the algorithm in 2024 or whatever it might be. And it's often the advice, and they show you like, make videos like this. And it's like, that's so noisy. It's so like, especially at the moment, there seems to be a trend of like just taking all the space out between the sounds and, the clipping the ends of sentences and like everything. And I just find it really difficult to keep up and to retain what's being said.
Me too. I think I made a conscious decision quite early to make mine a kind of calm space. And I think it was probably because in the early days I did a couple of videos and my voice was really screechy on it through nerves. And I thought, Christ almighty, I can't listen to that. And if I can't listen to it, other people can't. So I, gradually over time made a conscious effort to really try and sort of, quieten down and relax my voice, which is really hard to do when you're kind of first starting out. So, I listen to a lot of kind of ASMR videos, and I've drawn, a lot of kind of inspiration from those. And I just hate, there's a lot of art videos, for one, on YouTube that are just like, really punchy and crikey, and they'll often kind of incorporate other stuff, going on in the background, or, edit cuts every kind of 2 seconds. And I can't stand it. I've just never been able to kind of watch videos like that. I mean, there are occasionally people that come along and create amazing content, like Bobby Fingers I came across recently. But he's still got a really kind of calming voice. I think he's from Limerick, but he creates all these amazing videos. But I find most art YouTube to be really too much. So, I know that I'm going against the grain. I know, most people aren't going to want to listen to a kind of ASMR-y voice on a on an art video, but I don't care really. I'm just doing it for those few people that do,
I think there's a lot of people that do, actually.
Yeah. You never know. Voices like ours eventually might kind of, be the most popular thing on YouTube, because it is all. But, it's a waiting game, isn't it? We just have to wait and see. I have to say, you've got an amazing voice, Andy, as well. I'm super, particular about who I listen to. And I hope you go on to achieve loads with your podcast, because it's, great.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. And it's something that probably similar to you, really thinking about intentionality and being deliberate with slowing down and bringing that calm. Because I listened back to early podcasts that I created sort of 10 plus years ago, and it's so funny to hear there's a forced thing happening in my voice where you can almost hear the nerves and the sense of just trying to throw my words out and then trying to keep up with them and all of this stuff. And it's fascinating just to have that historical archive to go back and see how you've grown or developed. And it's like, wow. Yeah.
It's such a learning experience, isn't it? I really hate looking at old videos.
Yeah.
Really. And it's even, stuff like how I recorded stuff as well. It's, I'm certainly not a natural filmmaker, and I've learned a lot along the way. I've still got loads to learn about it. It's not a kind of natural skill to me, but I just like the whole kind of process behind it. It's, as I say, it's something different to do as well, instead of just, creating kind of model after model, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you do it. And
thank you.
So great to stumble on that video, and then to be a door into polymer clay, like modeling in altogether. I was like, I really want to give this a go. This is really inspiring.
You should, I'd love to see what you come up with if you do.
Yeah, I might. I'll need to watch a few more of your videos and get started. Yeah. And it'd be great to maybe get into some of the things that you discussed in that video, the 4 reasons why it's hard for artists right now. Because I think there's some really important stuff in there that isn't just I think it applies to other areas other than art as well. I think people kind of touched by all of those things.
There's various reasons why I think things are a real struggle for artists now. I think, the biggie over recent years is COVID, isn't it? It's really changed the landscape of just everything for artists, really. And I know a few artists that have just had to kind of jack it in, really? And create a different kind of work life for themselves. And names that you wouldn't even think would be having problems with getting work or selling work are struggling as a result of that, because the cost of living crisis that has ultimately come through COVID has been difficult. And for people like myself as well, I've got a chronic illness called MCAS. It's like it's an immune system disorder. So basically my immune system doesn't work properly. So I can't go out and do stuff. So, even if I were to be invited to host workshops, I had to turn one down last week because I have to mask. If I get COVID, I run the risk of, making my health substantially worse. So, that's another factor. And I'm undoubtedly not on my own with this, but I don't think enough people are kind of talking about it. It is a real issue for, people with dodgy immune systems. They can't just go off and do things as they, once were able to. So that in itself is, really frustrating. It's, difficult.
Yeah, it's hard. So the COVID, what changed with COVID in terms of, is it people's relationship with buying art, or I guess the cost of living crisis you mentioned, but
yeah, I think certainly for those that are kind of reliant on, just everyday consumers, people just, everybody's rents or mortgages have just sky high now, aren't they? And people have much less disposable cash. So ultimately that's an issue. And also there seems to be a real thing with kind of costs going up as well for, even hosting, your store. I know Big Cartel went up kind of recently where I host. Artists are, almost forced now to pay for, to boost their posts on social media platforms, because the algorithm basically just doesn't work anymore, does it? So invariably, you have to kind of pay for posts, and you're thinking about doing that on a multitude of platforms. It's just impossible really for a small independent artist. It's just becoming really difficult, and I don't know how we get out of this, really.
No, it's hard, isn't it? Yeah, I guess it's the margins. Everything costs more, and then do you put your prices up? And you're in the hands. It's the subscription models of things that you see as well, like online services and platforms, and they're just on a whim. It seems everybody just seems to raise their prices, and you're suddenly forking out a huge amount of money.
But the artists aren't, because they can't afford to. So again, you're kind of losing out. So
you're squeezed, Yeah,
and also, there's a multitude of things. There's Brexit as well. I know for me, I've had to stop selling to the EU because it's really difficult. EU customers get like lumbers with huge custom charges now as well.
Enormous,
so obviously, it's awful. What a mess we've ended up in, and for what, really.
These things that were warned about before that were written off as scaremongering. It's like, no, these things need sorting out.
It wasn't that hard to figure out, really, was it? You kind of, it's just maddening. I remember the morning that it happened, I just cried all day, because I was just like, what on earth? How has this happened? And now all the instigators of Brexit are all, effing off, aren't they, with their kind of fat cat salaries, not standing in the next election. But, that's for them to do. Again, that's across the board. I've seen a multitude of artists and illustrators that have stopped selling to the EU because it's just too difficult. And, even if they are able to send out packages, there just seems to be loads that are going missing, and it's really hard to kind of work out why that's happening. And there's the kind of algorithm at large as well, but also what is becoming apparent is AI is becoming a real danger to artists. And I know that you had a guy on quite recently, I can't remember his name, about
Mark
about, is he an AI kind of developer? I've forgotten what his
he helps businesses adopt or get ready to adopt the technological changes that are coming, essentially.
So I understand his viewpoint. He's got a completely different stance to me, but if you are speaking to artists or illustrators particularly, we've got the lived experience of people losing out on work now, and it's a common occurrence. And AI art looks really shit. So I don't know why on earth this is happening. I saw there was a literary festival last year that used AI arts on their marketing materials, which I just struggled to understand why on earth they thought that was a good idea. when they're working directly with creatives.
I think this is because to me, I've been sort of going back and forth on a lot of these issues and trying to work out, okay, where does AI fit in all of this, and does it have a place? And I found what Mark said in our conversation really interesting, from like when talking about almost the playful aspect of using it. So we're talking about Suno AI, which is a kind of songwriting one, and he would send little ditties to his friends that are fun and funny and things. And one of his kids has like quite severe autism and is able to use it to express themselves in ways that they couldn't otherwise. And it's like, there's some really important ways that it could enhance things. But then when you're looking at it from the perspective of people using the tools instead of employing a proper designer, giving that work to somebody, like, it's actually like with the literary festival you mentioned, that's where it's like, no, I'm not keen on that at all.
It's unreal, isn't it? I just was so shocked at it. And
it diminishes,
there's a number of people involved in that decision as well. It's not going to be one person. Like, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
When they use illustrators for books, these are people that they're kind of working directly with. To use AI, I think everybody was just gobsmacked. I think they offered an apology, after the facts, but the fact is that it just shouldn't have happened.
No.
And this is just one instance. I'm seeing more and more instances of, even creative houses, or art directors using AI, and what's that going to do to the industry? What happens to all these people that are potentially going to lose their jobs even? It's, and for what? For stuff that looks awful.
Well, that's the thing. It's a sort of downward spiral of quality in many respects as well, because it's like, well, it's only drawing from what's already existed, so it's not creative in the sense of developing new things.
I'd be really interested if there were to be some research conducted into this, and I don't know if there has been already, but the whole uncanny valley aspect, we know that people don't like it. People do not like looking at stuff that looks like pretend humans or whatever. So why are we doing it?
Yes, the philosophical questions around it, and around what is it that makes art meaningful? It's not the product, it's the story, it's the process. Like it's everything that goes into something that where that is ultimately the human spirit that inhabits a piece.
I find it insulting that it's called AI art, really, because it's it's certainly not, is it? It's just AI shits, really.
I was exploring. I haven't done it. It's about a year ago. I had a load of AI images, and I was creating music to reflect my feelings as I was looking at them. And so there's a video that I created.
I'll have to look at that one.
And I noticed the music was really reflecting there's like this empty melancholy, this I don't know, there's just a soullessness. And I think there's soul in the music, but it's a kind of disconnect, like almost a wall between the sound and the vision. And it just really struck me as I was watching it back, even though I created it. I was like, oh yeah, it's haunting. There's
wow.
It's like a dystopian.
How do you think AI will affect the music industry long term?
I don't know. There's different levels to it. I think you're already seeing it in Spotify playlists. It's difficult to tell sometimes whether there's actually AI generated music, especially there's like ambient music is very popular at the moment. So kind of just the stuff that you'd put on in the background and things, or stuff that helps you relax and focus. And I think a lot of that could be generated by AI. And so you could then, there's an incentive to just generate huge amounts of content and get it onto these playlists and make money for nothing, essentially. I don't know if that's going to be a long-term thing.
I think people are already doing that in books, aren't they? That with chat GBT, they're just like, just downloading stuff and shoving it in a book, and like,
it just cheapens the entire thing. Yeah, exactly. One of the things Mark was talking about was how the potentially almost a drug-like addictive aspect to, you could have it with music, where it plugs into exactly what you like need to either have a high or have a deep sensory experience. And then you could imagine people just in a very dystopian horror movie style world, just going around with headphones on, just listening to the music that the AI has generated just for them, and to be absorbed in that world. And
I'm not feeling that at all.
No. But it's like, I don't want that, but I could see how we could slide towards it.
No, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
But for the industry itself, it's very difficult to tell, because I mean, it's like, watch the Eurovision Song Contest, and almost all of the songs on that could have been generated by something like Suno AI, which is, an aggregator of all the songs that are in its data bank. And there's nothing particularly, there's nothing at all innovative really in any of those songs. Very generic. So I don't know, it might push us towards new ways of expressing, like it kind of forces the hand of creativity, because I think people will resist it and say, okay, we'll maybe put that over here, and we're going to go and be humans, and we're going to create over here. It might mean the industry falls apart in terms of the monetary part of it, and then it has to find a way of building from the ground up again. I don't know, but
I'm just hoping it's like kind of NFTs, everybody just went mad for them, and now everyone's like, what on earth? I just really hope that, AI is like that, but, I'm really worried about it.
Yeah, I think it will, like, I could see it fizzling to some degree, especially as there's more challenges of copyright, and the kind of the uses of data is more limited. So you see like big record labels either saying you can't use any of our licensed music in your whatever library your AI is taking from, or they become kind of wedded to AI app developers, and then you've got just exclusive little pockets here, there, and everywhere, and actually it kind of leaves the rest of us to get on with how we were doing things. So I don't know. It's
an interesting thought, isn't it? But I think artists just don't like it.
No, absolutely. And I love I didn't love it, but it was really interesting. You put that cake in the video, and there's an element of like, so people are sort of sensitizing or changing expectations to these images of cakes that have obviously been generated by AI, and then asking bakers to create them.
Oh yes, sorry, you see
a blank look on your face. What are you talking about, cake?
What? Cakes? What? I'd love a cake. That was really interesting. I think AI is affecting all sorts of industries that we hadn't even thought about. I saw this ridiculous image of a cow's head on a cake that looked you know, like the most improbable thing you'd ever see, and obviously created by AI. And it was just shown to me on Facebook, and I was like, what on earth is that? So I clicked into comments, and it was just, you know, half of them were like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'd love a cake like this. And, you know, the same people were saying, or the same bakers among them were saying, you know, I'm sick to death of people coming in with images like this saying, I want this made exactly like this, when it, you know, it was like some amazing feat of engineering to be able to put this kind of impossible thing together. Yeah. So, you know, what if that's just the baking kind of industry? Like, how many industries are affected by this? You know, people just seeing stuff online and, you know, taking it to whomever, saying, I want this, when it's not real. Why, you know, it's really obviously not real. Why on earth do you think it is? You know, what's happening?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the more you look at Facebook and all these images coming through, and, you know, these crazy images of, like, I don't know, it'll be like a young, hot woman that's made by AI holding a cake saying, this is the first cake I've ever baked, and I bet I get no likes for this image. You know, all these awful things. And you get all these people that are like, oh my God, this cake is amazing. You've done so well. And you're like, are we looking at the same thing?
Oh, it's infuriating.
I just don't get it. Yeah.
It's like, you're just encouraging the noise. There's two. Oh yeah. It's crazy.
I don't understand why. Is it because I'm autistic? I don't know. Why can't people see this? Is obviously not a thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's a lot of talk about labels having to go on things that are AI generated. I think because there are people like that. Because it's like,
and there's just huge swathes of them. It's just. Unless these are bots in themselves, you know, I don't know, who can say.
Yeah, could well be. Yeah, and it's just self-perpetuating engagement. Yeah. And to come back to the algorithms is where, because I think one of my biggest frustrations with the algorithms isn't necessarily my own reach, but it's what reaches me, which is why it was such a breath of fresh air to see your video, because, and I've likened it to, you know, being at a buffet and you pick something up and put it on your plate, and then the chefs and the people laying out the buffet are suddenly like, oh, he's got porridge in his bowl, he loves porridge, quick, fill the buffet with porridge.
It's exactly like that.
I've already got my porridge, like I want these other things, this is why I'm at a buffet. And it just doesn't work.
I think I mentioned to you, I like the Mr. Borland podcast, and that's the only true crime thing I ever listen to, because he's got a nice voice, and it's just, you know, strange stories basically that are based in truth. And that's as much as I want to delve into all this, you know, true crime stuff. But I just get bombarded with it. You know, I just think, what? I don't want to see all this. I want to see kind of art and stuff. You know, it's really interesting. They'll pick one thing, and it's like, as you say, have more of this. You know, it's really
just
weird.
You sort of have a little taste of. It's like, oh yeah, I like having, you know, a couple of chocolate buttons on my ice cream. Oh, chocolate buttons is all. It's like, no. Yeah, it's so that's where the algorithms just fail from a audience perspective, and then it just becomes impossible to cut through. And then unless you're, because I've seen a few people, YouTube creators, who go in on the really hypey headlines that capture people's, you know, morbid curiosity or the clickbaity side of things. And they say, you know, you've got to do this because that's what the algorithm requires. And it's like, yeah, I understand that. But at the same time, you're contributing to that culture that makes that the culture.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Getting that balance right is really difficult. But
I've reluctantly started doing shorts on YouTube, which is, you know, it just seems to be YouTube wants to, you know, creators to make loads of shorts now. And that in itself is, you know, an issue, because it's, I I find that my shorts do relatively well, but as a consequence of that, my long form videos that take ages to make sometimes do really poorly. And I know that I'm not on my own with this, because a lot of art YouTubers are on hiatus at the moment, and we'll be lucky if some of them come back, because they feel so demotivated by this. And in many instances their stuff won't translate to shorts, so just so they're making stuff that people don't want to watch on shorts to try and pull them over to their long form content, and there's just a real disconnect there. And I think I hope YouTube catches up on this. I think almost that YouTube Shorts has to be a separate endeavour entirely, because I really don't think the combination of the two work on the platform.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, and actually the value of the long form is the building the relationship between audience and creator, which doesn't happen with shorts, because it's that natural just flicking, like TikTok and Reels on Instagram, where you're not taking any notice of actually who's created the video, really.
No.
So,
and also it's a way of getting more subscribers, but these subscribers do not watch your long form content. No. So whenever you put out a long form video, it's obviously shown to your audience first, and if they're not responding to that, and if they're not clicking on those videos, then it's not going to be pushed out. So it's a problem. I think it's something that they need to address, because it's really affecting a lot of creators as far as I can see.
That's a really good point. Yes. Well, this time is absolutely
it's 12 o'clock already. Gosh, I've babbled on.
It's been so nice to talk about this stuff. And sorry, I'll probably bring things down by kind of everything's
not at all.
Everything's terrible. But I'd love to. What would be a good way for people to support you, and any thoughts on how people can support the arts in general at this stage?
Basically, I would encourage people to, follow, subscribe any artists they like or whose work they enjoy. Buy their work if you can. If you can't, as many people can't right now, it's a case of, sharing their work and, publicising their work, because this is the stuff that artists are having to kind of pay for now, really, is exposure, essentially. I think the more people that see your work, the more chances are that, you may well get commissioned, depending on what you do. For me, I only take kind of commercial commissions, and I sell my own private work, or my own kind of work in my store. But I just think that, just listen to artists. If you like somebody, follow their work and share it, really. I'd say is the biggest tip, or the biggest way that you can support. Also, if they've got like a Ko-fi or whatever, subbing or donating a coffee every so often is, it's a small gesture, but that kind of stuff really kind of helps. And it's kind of motivating in a way as well. You think, I'm obviously doing something right if people want to support my work in that way. So it's just tough, and any support kind of matters, really.
That's
certainly right now.
Those small gestures make a world of difference, and not assuming that somebody knows how good they are either, and just dropping them a message to say,
because honestly, that kind of stuff, I know that I'm not on my own with this, but if you get like a comment that's scathing about your work, that will stick with you for ages. And it's just really nice to hear all the lovely stuff to drown out that noise, really. It's really important to hear people enjoying your work and excited to see where you're going kind of next with it, really.
Totally. And where's the best place for people to find out more about what you're doing? And
I am Clay Disarray on most places, basically. So I'm most active, I would say, on Mastodon and on Twitter. I know Mastodon isn't everybody's cup of tea, but yeah, I just really like it. Also on Blue Sky and Threads, but I don't post as often there, or at YouTube, of course. So yeah, any one of those.
Great. I will share all those links.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lizzie, thank you so much. Yeah, this has been so nice, and really great.
I've really enjoyed it. I always get nervous about these kinds of things, but it's always nice to kind of do them, and to feel that kind of like joy afterwards, really, of talking to another creative. So thank you.
Wonderful.